It has been a deadly year for journalism, according to Reporters Without Borders. The number of journalists killed in conflict zones has reached a 5-year high. And, quote, in Gaza alone, more than 145 journalists have been killed since the start of the Israel-Hamas war just last year, including 5 Palestinian journalists killed just yesterday in an Israeli airstrike on their press vehicle, with visible markings that you can see. The Israeli military says it, quote, eliminated Islamic Jihad terrorists. Even domestically, things aren't great. Donald Trump, the guy who is set to become president in less than a month, campaigned on the promise to jail reporters and strip TV networks of their broadcast licenses for coverage that he does not like. So the broader question is, what do journalists here and abroad do going forward? Coming on to discuss is April Ryan. She's the longest-serving African-American White House correspondent and the D.C. bureau chief for The Griot. Molly Jong-Fast is special correspondent for Vanity Fair and host of the podcast Fast Politics with Molly Jong-Fast, and Dean Obadiah is the host of the Dean Obadiah Show on Sirius XM Radio and a columnist for MSNBC. They all join me right now. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining me this evening. Dean, I'll start with you. I think since you don't just do journalism, but also sort of comedy, you can understand that line between, hey, we should be able to make fun of people in power, but also we have responsibilities to the truth. How dangerous is it in your mind going forward that we have an administration where the incoming president and many of his underlings have said they want to sue journalists or social commentators into oblivion if they don't like what they have to say?
Jason, first of all, I don't sort of do comedy. I do actual comedy and make people laugh. That's what I do. But it's fine.
Yes.
Jason, but you raise a great point. And I wrote about this a couple of years ago for MSNBC. We learned after Trump left office that he turned to people in his administration and said, can you investigate Saturday Night Live? Yes, Saturday Night Live, where I used to work years ago, for mocking him. He tweeted publicly in 2019, the FCC should look into them. And as someone who performed comedy in the Middle East, I can tell you, dictators don't want to be laughed at. They want to be feared. Donald Trump is cut from the exact same cloth. There's a reason why he never went to the White House Correspondents' Dinners. He didn't want to be laughed at. He wants you to fear him. So I'm worried for journalists and also for comedy. And the idea of Trump supporters maybe going after comedians, yelling things at them, or the FCC under Brendan Carr going after media outlets that make fun of Donald Trump to the point where they self-censor. They go, it's just not worth it to make fun of him. We can do jokes about something else or tone that joke down. So, Jason, yes, on a serious note, comedy, I think, is in the crosshairs of Donald Trump coming in because he called for Saturday Night Live to be canceled when he was running for office in 2016. As president, he wanted his FCC to look into them. Now he's got the power to do it, and he's got Brendan Carr as FCC incoming chair, who I think will do it for him.
Dean, I want to follow up with this because I've thought about the sort of comedy journalism angle as well. Can you imagine a scenario, or do you think that our press is still strong enough that maybe incoming President Trump says, I will go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner if I can pick the comedian, only if it's Tony Hinchcliffe, only if it's somebody that he approves of? Do you think that our press corps as a whole would be strong enough to say, no, having you here is not worth compromising our integrity and only putting on sort of right-wing or MAGA comics?
I hope he picks me. Is that can I ask that, Jason? I would have so much fun mocking Donald Trump nonstop. I don't think the White House Correspondents Association would allow him. And I once joked with President Obama, I will work for food for the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And he made it clear to me, the White House Correspondents Association, they picked the comedian, not him. I don't think Donald Trump goes. Again, that's not what strong men want. They don't want to be laughed at. They want you to fear them. That's what Trump, that's the cloth he is cut from.
Molly Jong-Fast, I want to bring this up to you because Dean mentioned it. So Trump's pick for FCC, Brendan Carr, was recently on MSNBC, on CNBC. And he said, so, I mean, is that signaling that others have said that you've done, that you're open to TV networks having your licenses revoked, et cetera, et cetera? These guys are coming in and saying, we're going to look at every single cable outlet, every single newspaper with a fine-tooth comb, and basically create, if we can, a chilling effect. They're going to find somebody to make an example of. You're still sort of in print and digital journalism. Do you think that we are equipped? Do you think that cable news and television news and nightly news, and do you think journalism as a whole is equipped to resist these kinds of threats and this kind of bullying?
Yeah, I mean, that's a real question. And I think, it's really sort of scary to think that that's the moment we're in right now is can mainstream media outlets, keep themselves going? And it's a real question. I mean, in 2016, the American media was just much bigger. It had more money. It had more people and more, there was just a lot more of it. Now it's much smaller. It's sort of many fewer outlets, many fewer newspapers and magazines, and it's a real question. And I think it's really worrying. I would also add, look, a lot of media is now on social media for better or worse. And that too is a real question. I mean, you have, big outlets like TikTok, which speaks to a lot of young people, owned by a subsidiary of the Chinese government. I mean, so there are a lot of X factors here, and I think we're going to have to wait and see. But in my mind, the goal should be always to protect norms and institutions, and those would be the norms of the free press, which are extremely important to maintaining a healthy democracy.
April Ryan, not only have you been at the White House as a correspondent for years, you've seen different kinds of presidents, you have been sort of directly attacked by the previous Trump administration. So you know what they're capable of. You know the kind of language they use, the kind of intimidation tactics they use. When you speak to fellow journalists, and especially fellow black and brown journalists and journalists who are women and everything else like that, is there a palpable fear? Are people concerned that if they ask the wrong question to the new White House press secretary, that they could get that call from whatever floor of their building or whatever newspaper editor saying, hey, we can't afford to do that? Is there a fear in journalists and amongst journalists that you know of?
Yes, there is a fear. But Jason, let's bring in another group as well, the LGBTQ plus IA group. There is a fear amongst all of us, mostly those who have seen it before and stayed away from the fire. They're scared that they're going to be involved in the fire this time. And also those who've never covered Donald Trump as president are very concerned. But it's not necessarily President Trump that will do it. It's the minions, those who believe in the president, or if he puts your name in his mouth, that's it. Everyone finds you to be the target of their ire at that time. But I want to say this, and I'm holding firm to this. The First Amendment, not the second, not the third, freedom of the press, that is who we are as White House correspondents. And we're made the First Amendment because if there are no checks and balances in the White House, in the legislative branch, and in the judicial branch, there's the Fourth Estate, the press, the White House press corps. And who are we and who are our companies if we cannot ask legitimate questions and fear going to jail? That is not patriotism. Our founding fathers put in the First Amendment, freedom of the press, freedom of the press. That is patriotic, no matter the question, if you like it or if you don't. And at the end of the day, we have to do our job without fear or favor.